This evening, we're joined by Gabrielle Blackwood, an award-winning Jamaican director and director of photography who has written, directed, and shot short films, documentaries, and commercials in both Jamaica and New Zealand. This is as part of TTFF 20, the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. Joining us also this evening is Wendell Manwarren, co-producer with Roger Roberts of JumpTT, and this is something that was directed by Shari Petty. So we say good evening, Wendell. Good evening, Gabrielle. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening, DK.
Gabrielle, I want to start off with you, though. The documentary that you're doing is called Unbroken. Give us an overview of the film, thanks.
So, Unbroken is about a young man, Laurent, who has lost one of his legs, and he is trying to make a life for his child, and he decides to join the Olympic, or he's trying to make it to the Olympic rowing team in Jamaica. He can't even qualify for the Paralympic team because he's not disabled enough. And so it is that journey of him training with able-bodied rowers and ultimately for himself.
No, it blows my mind when you say he's not disabled enough. But how did you find out about this and say that this is something that I want to pursue?
So I was contacted by Get to Images UK, and they wanted to do some short stories of, Jamaican life and Jamaicans. And so I started exploring, different areas. I started exploring music. I started exploring sports and just doing, research in various areas. And then I came upon the story, and then I went and I spoke with Laurent, and it was he was just this very humble individual, just, trying to make a way for himself. And it was just only by chance that he himself came upon the idea of joining the rowing team and making something of himself in that manner. And I was just, he enlightened me in a lot of ways. And so that's why I wanted to his story. And that's why Get to was also interested in his story.
All right, thank you so much. Now, Wendell, Shari says that the process of filming the documentary took about 3 months, but it seems as though you've been interacting with the participants of JumpTT for more than that. Take us through that process. What was that like?
Well, first contact was made with us here at the Black Box after Carnival 2017. So that's 3 years ago. And it was Annalie Davis of the British Council had approached us, and she brought some people from the National Theatre of Scotland, Simon Sharkey and Christopher Grant. And they were interested in mounting a project that they had mounted in Scotland to great success. And then they took it to Jamaica, and it became Run Free in Jamaica because of their history and association with running. And the next stop was Trinidad and Tobago, and they wanted to incorporate the idea of the carnival-esque somehow. But so they came to us, and we were quite keen to get on board because it was the first time we didn't have to go seeking a project or seeking funding. But the big challenge was finding the cohort of people to mount the project on, because it was particularly aimed at at-risk groups and at-risk communities. And I'd just come off working on another project that was aimed at at-risk communities, but I had a challenge there because I found it a sort of cosmetic intervention and very short-lived. So we had a little pushback with the National Theatre of Scotland and the British Council and said, I would like to mount it in the Black Box and use the young people who pass through the Black Box as the people that I considered at risk, because many of them were expressing lots of frustration with getting proper work or, getting opportunities or just dealing with life, really. And it also took on a whole new life when we included the MILAT, the young men from the MILAT program, which is a military training program aimed at rehabilitating fellows who might be looking to drift off the straight and narrow. So we were involved with that process for over a year and a half before Shari came in. By the time Shari came in, we had the group that we knew we wanted to work with.
Now, you speak about that affirmation, and we're going to get back to it because I think it's a very important point that you touched on. But Gabrielle, the way that you use sound to me is interesting. I actually like this pairing because both of you all deal in sound. But describe how you use sound, Gabrielle. And I say that because even the way that the trailer starts, it takes me back to hearing those 3 short dashes and the long dashes of a BBC time signature before the news starts. But even before you give me your answer about what you think about when you use with sound, we're going to play the trailer now for Unbroken.
People assume that because you're disabled and that you have one leg, there's a limitation to what you can do. And a lot of persons apply that knowledge and that instinct towards themselves.
Persons, when they see him in the boat, they don't even know that he only has one leg.
Again, disability means that you're not able to do something. I see myself as somebody very much capable and able of doing almost anything.
Gabrielle, what goes through your mind when you're deciding to use sound, whether or not to say something specifically or build a texture?
So to that point, for anything else, a lot of people assume that sound is not important. And I think sound is equally as important as the visuals that you're seeing. And especially for the trailer and just the film itself, what was the first thing that inspired me was Laurent, because he has this quiet humility. I wanted to be able to show that, but also, you know, we had to go on the water ourselves. And when you're out there, for day trains, Jamaican rowing team trains on the Kingston Harbour, which is in the middle of ships, etc. And, you know, it's all hustle and bustle, but there is a quiet period. And when you're just out there, it's just a lapping of the waves that you're hearing and your own thoughts. And a lot of the time he referred to, you know, his internal thoughts and, you know, just speaking to himself and trying to motivate himself. And I think that's what I was also trying to bring across. As well as the fact that there's a resident crocodile in the harbor that they kept referring to. And so there's this undertone of, I don't know if you can hear it, but it was put there deliberately where it sounds almost like something menacing is about to, you know, break the surface. So that was the reason for that as well.
Thank you so much for that. And yet many people sometimes think that sound is a throwaway. But we continue this conversation, not throwing away anything. When we return, we're speaking with Gabrielle Blackwood and Wendell Manwarren. Stay with us.
What next is always a challenge. And it's a legitimate question. Lots of good things are going to come out of this.
The philosophy behind parkour, the idea of we start together and we finish together, that getting from A to B and overcoming obstacles.
It's a physical way to get to the core of how people feel and how they want to express themselves.
Part of the story, or the process of creating the story, is to get them to go inside of themselves, inside their heads, and the way their heads can inform how their bodies move.
How many people have stories that we don't know about?
My mother has been shot 6 times and has survived, right? All over.
I was home with my mother and 2 fellows came to kill me and my mother stood there with me.
You never know what people are walking around with.
Welcome back. We are speaking with Gabrielle Blackwood and Wendell Manwarren. As you saw in the start of that trailer, we also had sound being interpreted or interspersed with action. Wendell, you started off saying that it was nice, and that nice sounded like a heavy understatement, to see your work validated or affirmed, but then having the power to say, okay, well, this is how I want it to go, as opposed to this thing that you're bringing to me. Looking at that trailer and thinking of the experience, how important to you was it that you were able to do something that was a little more than the cosmetic that you would have seen happen a little while ago, you would have been a part of, and be able to kind of shape this in the manner that you think it should go?
Well, it was incredibly important. I mean, it was frustrating at times because we weren't sure if we would, you know, get the right mix of people. And it took a while, you know, we had many workshops and many people showed up, and some were too young and some were too old, or some were disinclined. or they just thought it was jumping about and they weren't prepared for the storytelling part. So when it finally came together, it was very satisfying. And as I said, you know, when my lad came in, it really did give the whole thing an added oomph, because, you know, those boys, they'd never been exposed to anything like the process we put them through. And initially there was a kind of hesitance, I wouldn't say resistance, but at the end of it, everybody was, I would say, transformed by the process. And it really is a metaphor for how to navigate life, you know, jumping over obstacles, using parkour, using your imagination, realizing that you can't really power yourself through a jump. You have to be as gentle and as graceful, and soft landings and all that kind of thing. And using the hero journey, for me, it was very important to see it come alive. But the most important thing was making the decision to engage Shari, because we knew it was just going to be a one-off, one-night thing. And with Shari on board, it now has a life beyond. So I'm deeply, you know, touched by that. This is my first time. I have nothing but respect for Gabrielle and Shari and what they do. You know, I make live shows and make music and that kind of thing. But to have a living document and a testament to what you do is very powerful.
And I want to speak about the role of Shari and Gabrielle, and I'll invite you to do this, Gabrielle, because you and Shari are going to be part of a workshop, the role of the director of photography. Take us through a little bit of that, please, for those who might just say, okay, well, this person telling people what to do or this person holding a camera. What does that entail?
So, I mean, and I'll get in depth in it at the workshop, but a lot of people, yes, assume that a director of photography is somebody who holds a camera and lights, or they may just think, oh, it's a videographer. No, it's much more than that. A lot of people forget the preparation process that, you know, you have to go through, whether it is shot listing, scouting, you know, repping an area at the scout, figuring out electricals outside of the lights that you're going to use, ensuring that there is enough power, ensuring that, you know, there's a good power source, also, you know, where the location is and what makes sense. Because the thing is, the director of photography is the HOD, or we are the HOD of our department. So, you know, we're in charge of the gaffer, the grips, anything that has to do with tech and camera. And also, you know, things, you know, choices like in your shot list, do you have your lens selection? Also, how can you bring about the idea that the director wants to bring forward, which is actually the most essential part of it. And it's just using the tools that you have at your disposal to do that and how you do that.
No, and I'll just make a plug here in the sense that reminding you that the festival runs from September 9th to the 15th. Screenings are online this year. You can buy tickets. They can be bought online at the ttfilmfestival.com, and you can pay via bank transfers from TTFF office at 22 Jerningham Avenue. For more information, you can call 323-3228 or email hello@ttfilmfestival.com. So we don't have to push that into the end, but it's there. But Wendell, I want to get to you though. When you go to the black box and you see Three Canal perform, or you see Three Canal perform normally, blocking, movement is a thing that has been worked on. Bodies are not there because they happen to be there. There's a conscious placement. How much of that were you trying to bring into the experience with the children, or the individuals rather, at JumpTT? And also, I want to ask if you, coming from that background, saw a difference with the way that individuals treated their bodies and used their bodies after the experience.
Well, yes, absolutely. It was interesting because, I mean, working on a Three Canal show with 20 dancers, and we prepare for months in advance, and there's lots of blocking and everybody knowing where they have to be. Likewise, with people who are jumping over obstacles and diving and flipping, you have to have a sense of where people are going to be. But by the same token, we didn't want it to be so fixed in a performative way. We still wanted to give them a little latitude to explore the boundaries of, is that like an obstacle course, and how do you cover that terrain and tell your story in the process. So it was good because the team from Scotland, they brought lots of techniques that they shared with us. And then we say, okay, I like that approach, but what if we had a little bounce state and a little rhythm, and we put some music here and there, and they like that approach. And together we came up with something that was kind of new for both of us.
No, I look at this and I think a capoeira. I look at this and I think as a calendar where you use body as an expression. I look at this and I think of Leantoinette Steins from Jamaica, who created an entire new technique, land tech. And she sometimes speaks about the difference between Eastern and Western. So like something like ballet, the body is held very stiff and you try to control everything along a large surface versus being able to control the only thing that you have possession of sometimes, which is your body, but being able to be expressive like that. So, off of my soapbox though, Gabrielle, if there's one thing in this, because I consider it a hero's journey as well, that you want people to take away from the film, from the movie, from the documentary Unbroken, what would that be?
I think the most important thing and what stuck out to me is no matter what obstacles come in your way, there's always a way around it, and never give up. Just never give up.
All right, and I'll ask you the same, Wendell.
Well, you know, the whole idea of, you know, I think it was said earlier in the trailer, you never know what stories people are walking around with. And, you know, a lot of our young people, they have some serious stories to tell. The young man who tells of his mother being shot 6 times, or the other guy who spoke about, you know, gangsters coming to kill him. That came out of a process. And that came out of creating an environment of trust and an environment where they could feel free to share. Because, you know, many of these young men, and it's funny how the project is meant for all, but it tends to attract primarily young men. I guess it's the parkour element and the daredevil aspect. They're quite prepared to do a dive where they may break their neck, but to tell their story, to open up and share something about themselves is a big challenge and a big risk. So to marry the two, to arrive at getting them to tell their story through taking certain risks, through overcoming certain challenges, was very, very rewarding.
And I want to thank you for actually being in that space and curating that space, because it's the way that that young man said that so easily, apart from the process that it would have been going through to get to the point where he's able to say it. That speaks to me, I'll own it. It speaks to me of just, it's almost kind of being run of the mill. And something very within his experience as opposed to a novelty. So I want to thank you. I also want to thank you, Gabrielle, for capturing that story the way it is. And we're looking forward to being able to see these. So remember, you can go to the website and look for the schedule of when these films will be featured on screen. And on behalf of the entire news team, I'm DK Roster. We want to thank you for joining us, and we want to wish you good night.